As I've been mentioning, the departing Chief Executive of New Zealand Rugby, Mark Robinson, is with us, and he's been kind enough to walk, about 50 metres down the hallway to jump in and sit with us. Good to see you, mate. Yeah. First of all, before we get on to your departure, we've celebrated a lot today, but some really sad news coming out this morning after the death of Stu Wilson, a heck of a character and an excellent All Black as well.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sort of rugby community's mourning this news overnight, and speaking from personal experience as a young kid growing up in the Taranaki in the late 70s, early 80s, he was an absolute icon of the game for players of that generation and just a wonderful character as well. So certainly extended our condolences to the family. It's a sad time for all of rugby, but especially that whole era of players that played with him. And I see Murray Mexted's come out today. David Kirk, our chair, has spoken fondly of him. He's he was a well-loved character and will be significantly missed. Yep,
exactly right. Well said. How do you feel today after announcing your news?
I feel good, yeah. Look, I guess the preparation that goes into it, you're working with a few people to make sure that the timing and the sequencing and all that rolls out as you plan. But I was in Wellington this morning to see our team and talk to the staff, and then came up today, and I've been around the Auckland office a little bit, back up to Auckland, and obviously did some media earlier. So I've had lots of lovely messages, and I just want to sort of get through it now over the next 12 hours or so, and really get on with the next 6 months. As we've said, there's lots to do, and I'm really excited about that.
Geez, you've had some challenging times, though, haven't you, since you've marked centre stump? You look like the COVID era, the Fozzie issue, and Silver Lake, you've had to deal with that. So there's been a few hurdles you have to jump over. Do you look back at those times fondly?
Look, I look back on them all. If you take them, it's quite a big answer. Question, Millsy.
Like 20 odd minutes.
Yeah, I know. Look, COVID, I think people will look back in time and say we did a really strong job getting through that. We came out of that period, which lasted longer in New Zealand than in most countries, as you know, and especially as it relates to sport and entertainment. And we were able to grow revenue, on an annual basis, by over 60% of that time, over $100 million of revenue we've grown through that time. So that's allowed us to invest in all areas of the game, and I feel really proud of the achievements we've had across the community, the professional game, our teams in black, and the way we've started connecting differently to fans and building a product on the field that we can all be a lot more excited about, which I'm really pleased by. So getting through COVID was extremely tough on people and relationships, but feel like we did a pretty solid job. Look, the All Black era of 22, 23, as I said earlier, we focused really hard on making sure the team had everything it needed to perform at its best. It was a team-first approach, and we made the decisions that we needed through that time. And the lead up to the World Cup, and then ultimately in the decisions we made about this current tenure to look after the team and its performances and making sure it had the best chance of winning, and stand by those decisions, as it stands today. And I certainly look at the environments now, the way that men's, women's, 7s and 15s, the degree of alignment and collaboration across all those programs, and what we're seeing in terms of connection with Super Rugby. We're in a really good space as it relates to All Blacks and our other national teams and the way they're aligned with the organisation as well. And look, the Silver Lake deal, a lot's been made of that, especially back in those days. But there's not many sporting organisations or leagues or franchises in the world that don't invest in the fan now, and I don't think anyone would argue about. Especially in a model like ours, which I guess compared to other professional sports was slow to invest in the fan, and things like content and digital and real reach around not only New Zealand but around the world to capitalise on the strong brands we have. Ultimately believe that's the right investment too, and we're starting to see some really positive signs when you look at Toyota recently talk about the benefits they are seeing and the growing reach that we're providing platforms like theirs, as well as Gallagher come on board last week and make really positive noises about our global reach there as well. So look, there's always things that could be done differently or better, but overall, the big points you point to, Millsy, we're pretty proud of some of the things we worked through then.
What could you have done differently?
As it relates to big major decisions and strategy and principles behind those, I'm really proud of what we've done. There's always things around execution or the ways of working that might be slightly different, especially when you're working in a COVID environment where, the ability to be face to face with people, the whole working remotely, working from home, people being restricted so much, that was incredibly challenging to get everything, right. And I think it'd be fair to say too, when you're going through a major change process, very rarely do you always get absolutely 100% positive feedback on everything you do in terms of change. And we recognised early, I was very clear early on, that we had a range of different things in our game that we had to look to change. The product was one, and we've made significant progress over 5 years. When you look at Super Rugby this year, it's by far the best competition we've seen in many, many years in terms of the product and the jeopardy in the competition and that sort of thing. We talked about the community game a lot, and we've made unprecedented investment in that space as it relates to investments through our provincial unions into teenagers, women and girls, referees, you name it, we're investing more in that space. And the fans, we've talked about, the way we connect with fans around the world, and we've set up platforms to do that as well, which I believe over time will continue to grow real value for us.
Look, I couldn't agree more with you when it comes to Super Rugby this year. It's been brilliant to watch as a viewer at home. But what's your take on the state of the international game? We just saw last week Mike Tyndall coming out with his, what was it called? R360?
R360,
R360, yeah. So is that there to disrupt the landscape of rugby?
Well, no, they my understanding, I met with them some time ago now, I haven't seen them recently, is that they are looking at the club game especially and see some opportunities. We haven't heard a lot about it in this part of the world. I don't think we have a significant player base signed up to it from what I understand, Millsy. We are probably relying more on our colleagues in the north who are a bit dubious as to where it's sitting at the moment. So, but your point around disruption's a really good one, and we'd be the last to say that people shouldn't be thinking differently about things. We've certainly tried over the last few years, as it relates to working within our stakeholder environments, to look to advocate for change, both domestically and internationally. I do wonder about that initiative or that competition, maybe taking a breath and working in with some other, more established club competitions around the world to see what it might have been able to achieve. But we'll see how that plays out in the next little while.
Was it entirely your choice to leave?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as I said, we've from a family standpoint, we've had, my wife and all of our three children overseas in Australia now for over a few months, and being based in Auckland on my own now is not it's not the greatest. So I used to travel and used to being away from family, but we're certainly at a stage of life where I'd like to be around them more. I mean, I think in 6 months' time, into the new year, being around with them, that's still a lot of time away from them, but we can work through that. We know where the finish line is now, and we'll try and get over there as much as I can over the next little while.
Hey, Robbo, what are some of the issues you see facing New Zealand rugby? We see here at home in New Zealand, like the Warriors fan base really growing momentum. We've seen the introduction of Auckland FC here in Auckland, which has just taken over the city in the summer. What are some of the challenges facing rugby at the moment?
Well, they're definitely multifaceted, and they're based around changing society and changing norms and communities, and as well as rival codes. But if you look at the number of, if you look at the impressions and the data coming out of Super Rugby, and you look at the viewership, and you look at a whole number of things on socials, you'd struggle to see more engagement and more viewership across any sport in the country. You don't. It's leaps and bounds ahead of where on a week-by-week basis other sports are at. We've had, as it relates to participation, we've had year-on-year growth in the last 2 years in the community game. We've seen 2 years of year-on-year growth in teenage boys, which is a big marker for us. So look, we still remain positive that we've definitely got challenges and things we've got to acknowledge around perceived safety in the game. We would argue it's one of the safer pastimes you can have, especially at that community level. And we do amazing research and work in that space. There's definitely shifting dynamics around family and work and facilities in places like Auckland as well. So there's a range of different things, but we feel we've been pretty proactive responding to a lot of those in recent years and adapting our sport to meet the market, meet the players and participants and the fans right across the board. Is
it one of the safest pastimes though? We see everything happening around CTE at the moment. What kind of challenge, or where do you stand on the CTE side of things and how rugby is handling it at the moment?
Well, we feel really positive about the work we're doing in that space, Sky. We lead a lot of the work that goes on at World Rugby. In fact, rugby is called upon by sports like the NFL in terms of the work it does on research in the space and the work it does on collisions and that sort of thing. So, look, there's always work to do, as there is in many areas, but, I think the initiatives we've taken around on the professional side, speeding the game up, looking to make sure in the community game we've got different formats, different non-contact formats, rules which take some of the risk around contact out of the game or reduce it significantly have been really good steps forward in that space.
Look, mate, you're in such a tough position at times, Robbo, especially around keeping the traditions of the game. Keeping people happy, that's a hard thing to do. Keeping the balance book on the right side of the ledger as well. We see the All Blacks in recent times playing, was it one game a year over in the US, trying to grow the game over there. So you see more of that happening. And if it is a growing the game thing, why does it fall upon New Zealand Rugby to make that sacrifice to grow the game? Or is it purely just to fill the coffers a little bit more?
It's a great question. I think, I reflect on that opening comment you made as one of the biggest challenges in the role is preserving the history and fostering the traditions of the game and maintaining, the ethos of the game we all loved and many of us have grown up with the fact that it does have to evolve and change. And when you work through that evolution and change and it relates to things like playing offshore test matches, that gets people talking and having views, which is at one level really great. But I guess we've always understood, and it was part of the Silver Lake thesis as well, that we are in a tiny economy. We're in a very isolated part of the world, and rugby does not have the equivalent of what you see in cricket as it relates to in India in its code. So we have to, by virtue of the strength of our brands and the strength that people have around connection to our teams, we have to often lead the development of sports into places like Japan and North America. And we've been quite bold in the approach we've taken there. We've got an MOU with Japan, which is a 5-year term, which sees us go up into Japan at least twice a year with our national teams. And in the States, we're still building out that calendar. But partnerships are really important. It's something I've reflected on. You need partnerships in anything you do, especially internationally and domestically for that matter. And, we are finding it difficult at times to encourage others to go into that market, especially in North America, and want to spend as much time as we're looking to do there. And that's why World Rugby are considering things in the lead up to the World Cup as to how to incentivise, teams and national unions to go into that space and want to play more.
I know you've got to get to a meeting and we don't have too much longer with you. A couple of things I was keen to get through quickly, if you can. Yeah. The men's sevens program, obviously they took on the moniker of the All Blacks Sevens. They have not performed overly well this year. Is that damaging the All Blacks brand across the world, do you think, outside of New Zealand, where we know that they are the All Blacks Sevens and they are the Sevens team different from the All Blacks, but overseas I think people see All Blacks and they see that the Sevens team is struggling?
It's one of your bugbears, isn't it, Guy? I think you've asked me in three interviews in a row, but that's all right. I mean, it's fair enough. Look, and it's a fair question. So, look, no, I don't think it's damaging the All Blacks brand. We're seeing, we've obviously made announcements in recent times around our brand taking game to Chicago's and the sellouts. There's definitely a strong and growing fan base as it relates to the All Blacks. But look, the name of All Blacks was assigned to the Sevens many years ago. We're more, I guess, focused at the moment on the performance environment and what we can learn there, rather than getting too hung up on that branding part of your question. And we're thinking, we've had a significant sort of removal, I think we said this last time, of experience out of that environment. But when they come back now to base, what can we learn and what's happening in the environment? How do we get a bit better there? And simply we haven't had the time to do that yet.
This is moving along to Super Rugby side of things, is there any concern, or should we be concerned at all about Moana losing 15 players in the weekend? That's a lot of players. I know that's their business, but I know New Zealand Rugby has a bit to do with them. Should we be concerned at all about them losing 15 players?
Yeah, look, I was away, I was overseas on the weekend with family actually, so I haven't caught up with that news in detail. Look, we have really strong systems in place around all of the Super Rugby licences, and I'm sure our team will be looking into that. We've certainly got a great relationship with Minor Pacifica, and we'll be keeping a good watch on it.
Okay, sweet as. You've got to go. How have you found the job? How have you found it? I know you've had a lot of criticism. How have you found that side of things?
I've loved it, and I got into a space of having reasonable peace of mind as it relates to criticism a long time ago, and you. I
think you have to in that job, right?
You know, and when you're genuinely. Me or the team make a stuff up or something hasn't quite worked, but too, especially now, when to ignore that and move on, and we're on the right track. And there's a lot of good things happening in the game.
Good man. Thank you very much for that.
Guys.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Yeah.